Hey guys, we're back with another video, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to set up a settings menu such as the one you see here on screen, where we have different settings for video, audio, and gameplay. Now I'm not going to be showing you how to set up every single setting that you see here due to time constraints, because this video would be super long and it's already long enough as it is. So before I actually get started, I do want to mention that this video is actually part of the GoGodotJam. If you don't know what the GoGodotJam is, it's essentially a month-long festival celebrating the Godot engine, and it's going on right now for the entire month of November, and hosts are hosting events every day, whether it's a live stream or a video. That's all Godot related. If you want to find out more about the GoGodotJam and the events, you can actually visit the website. The link will be in the description down below. Anyway, with all that said, let's jump right in. So before I actually get started with making the settings menu work, I want to mention a couple things. So as you can see here, I already have a start screen, and I'm not going to be showing you how to make a start screen. If you want to know how to do so, I do have a tutorial on my channel. I'll leave the link somewhere on screen, but basically the settings menu is going to be a pop-up, and it's going to be its own scene. And the way it's going to work is I'm actually going to have my settings menu as a child at the start screen. It's going to be hidden by default, and when we click the settings button here, it will actually go ahead and unhide or show the settings menu. So that's how it's going to work, and then it's going to work the same way as in our pause menu as well. So we're going to have our settings menu be part of the pause menu as well, and when we click the settings button, it will show the settings menu. Anyway, let's actually get started with making the settings menu work. So I'm actually opening up the settings menu, and as you can see here, this is the settings menu we're going to be working on. And if I just select the tabs container and go to the inspector and change the current tab, I can choose which settings I want to show, such as the audio, the gameplay, or the video. Now I'm not going to be showing you how to make this interface for the settings menu because of time limitations, and as you can see, it's made up of a bunch of different buttons, labels, and sliders. So I'm actually going to be leaving a link to the GitHub project in the description, where you can actually download the starting project and then actually download it and follow along with the video, and you can actually access the settings menu scene here and go and look into all the nodes that make it up if you want to, know more about it in full detail. But yeah, let's actually get coding. So to actually make this implementation of the settings menu work, I'm actually going to be using multiple scripts, and one of the scripts that I'm going to be using is a save script. So I'm not going to go into full detail here, so you can pause the video here to copy the code, or if you already have a settings save script, then you can modify your save script to be something like this. But I'll just briefly cover it. So at the top, we're setting a path to our save file as a constant. We're getting a variable that we're calling game data, which is an empty dictionary. On our ready, we're doing load data, which is a function here that we're doing var file is equal to file.new, and then we're checking if our save file actually exists with this line of code here. If it doesn't exist, which is the case here, if it doesn't exist, we're going to give the game data the default values for our settings, so such as the full screen on, which is going to be set to false by default, vsync on to false by default, and so forth. So this is where you would define all the settings that you want to actually be able to adjust. Now like I said, I'm not going to be covering all these settings, just some of them. But basically it's going to set these as our game data defaults, if the save file doesn't actually exist, and then we're saving the data, which is another function where we're doing var files equal to file.new. We're opening our save file and we're writing to it, and then we're storing the game data as using the store var line code right there, and then we're closing the file since we're done with it. This all happens if the file doesn't exist. If it does exist, then we're opening the save file, we're reading the save file, and then we're setting the game data to the file.getVar, which returns the next variant value from the file. So that's essentially how it works, and then I can do file.close to make sure that we actually close the file, since we don't need it anymore. So that's how the save works. Now let's actually add our script to our settings menu. So go ahead and go to your settings menu scene, select the settings menu and attach a script to it. I'm just gonna call it settings menu and then make sure that it's empty, and then it's gonna just be saved in my GUI folder. You can save it wherever you want and you can name it whatever you want in your case. But it is a pop-up, so it extends pop-up. And then to actually get started, I want to actually get a reference to all the sliders and buttons that I'm going to be using for the settings. So I'm going to start with the video setting buttons. So I'm just writing the comment video settings, so I know that these are the video setting buttons. And then I'm just getting a reference to all those different buttons, such as the onReadyVar display options button. And then we're actually getting the reference to it. So $display options, and then autocomplete should help you get the rest of the path for it as well. So we want to do the same thing for the rest of the settings that we want to set, and in this case I'm only going to pick a couple, like I said. So onReadyVar, and let me actually see which ones I want to set. So in this case I'm going to do display mode, vsync, and bloom. I think that should be good enough for the video settings. So yeah, let's go with that. So we're going to do onReadyVar vsync underscore button is equal to $vsync button. Autocomplete should give you the option to just, you know, select the path reference. And then onReadyVar bloom button is equal to $bloom button. Autocomplete should help you yet again, and so forth. So just keep doing this for the rest of the settings that you want. So now I'm going to do the audio settings. And for the audio settings, I'll do the master volume slider. So onReadyVar master slider is equal to $master volume slider. onReadyVar music slider is equal to the music slider. So just get a reference to it and make sure that it's actually getting the right reference. And then those are all I'm gonna set up for the actual audio settings. I don't actually have SFX for this, or sound effects for this project here, so I'm not gonna worry about that. You can set it up on your own. But for the gameplay settings, we're just gonna do onReadyVar FOV val to get the, and then get the reference to it, and then that's the label for our FOV. Showing the amount of it, and then onReadyVar FOV slider, which is actually getting a reference to the actual FOV slider that we set up. Then we also want to get the mouse sensitivity value, so onReadyVar mouse sense value, and for some reason autocomplete's not giving me the actual path, so I can just right click on the actual node and then do copy node path, and then go back to the script and then simply paste it and make sure that the $ is actually in front of it, so that it actually doesn't give us an error, and make sure that onReady is actually spelled correctly. Now with that, I want to get the actual slider, so onReadyVar mouse slider is equal to $sign, and then instead of writing the full, you know, node path, I can use autocomplete by just typing mouse sense slider. So we're getting a reference to all those buttons and sliders that we're going to be using for this video. You would have to do this for all the options that you're going to set for your project. Anyway, we're going to set up a ready function, and we're just going to do pass for now. And then we want to actually start connecting signals to actually make this work. So we're going to select the display options button, and then we're going to go over to the inspector node and connect an item selected signal to our script for that option there. And then for the Vsync button, we're going to connect a toggled signal, and then the same thing for our bloom button. It's also going to be a toggled signal to our script. They're all going to be passed for now, so don't worry about it for now, the code at least. And then we are gonna do it for our audio settings as well. So open up your audio settings, select the master val slider, and then in this case we're gonna connect a value change signal to our script for it. And then we're gonna do the exact same thing for the music val slider as well. So this is looking all good to me. For that, we're just missing the gameplay settings that we're going to be using in this case. So select the FOV slider. It's also going to be a value change signal and connect it to the script, and then mouse sense slider and a value change signal as well. Now the way the settings menu is going to work is essentially it's going to act as a controller for the actual settings. So the actual settings are going to be stored in a global script. So go ahead and create file, click file, new script, and then in this case I'm going to call it global settings. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and select where I want to save it. In this case, I'm just gonna save it in my source folder. You could go ahead and actually create a new folder if you want, but I'm just gonna save it in the source folder that I have here. So just click create. Now we're actually gonna make this an autoload. So go to project, project settings, autoload. And then as you can see, I actually already have some autoloads here, such as the music and the save file, which the save file is really important to have as an autoload. And then the music, if you wanted to play as soon as the game launches, then you also want to have it as an autoload. And that's actually go ahead and add the global settings as an autoload here, and then click the add to actually add it. And now the global settings is a singleton, giving us access to it from anywhere in our scripts. Anyway, for the actual code, we want to start by defining a toggle full screen function. So func toggle full screen, and then we're passing a value to it. This value is going to be coming from the actual setting menu. So to actually set the full screen, we do os.window full screen and then set it equal to the value. OS is the operating system, and then we're using the functions, which has a function called window full screen. When true, the window is full screen, as you saw there. So that's how this works. So we're gonna get the value from our settings menu, and then it's gonna be passed to this function, and then it's gonna be a true false value that we're passing, and that's how we're gonna set the full screen to true or false. Anyway, we want to do something pretty much the same for our vsync option as well. So func toggle vsync, we're passing the value as well, and then this is also part of the OS. So os.vsync enabled is equal to value. It works just the same way essentially as well. So when it's set to true, vsync is enabled. When it's false, it's disabled. And we're passing this value yet again from our settings menu. Then the next setting we're setting is the bloom, I believe. Yes, it is. So we want to do func toggle bloom, passing a value yet again, but this one's a little bit different because this isn't actually part of the OS. It's actually part of the world environment, or our environment. So if I go to my world environment, which is actually its own scene in my case, and I actually go into the environment, you will notice a property called glow, which is set to default disabled, but if I enable it and I actually have a value for the bloom, it's important that you actually have a value for the bloom, otherwise there won't be any bloom. The way we're going to make it work is by enabling and disabling the glow. And yeah, that's how we're going to actually make this work. So to make it actually work in the actual function, we're going to use a signal. So let's actually define the signal that we're going to use. So at the top of our global settings, we're going to define that custom signal. So signal bloom toggled. And then we want to actually pass a value with this signal. So in the actual func toggle bloom function, we're going to emit that signal. So emit signal bloom toggled, and we're going to pass the value we're getting from the settings menu when that signal is emitted, passing it therefore to our world environment as well. And to pass it to my world environment, we want to select the world environment and actually add a script to the world environment as well. And I actually already have a script for the world environment, so I'm just simply gonna load. In your case, you will have to create it, or if you're using the starter project, then you can just load it as well. Anyway, here's the code we actually need, and for some reason we're getting an error here, and I think it's, let me see, global settings isn't declared in current scope. It says at the bottom. I think it's just an issue with the naming of the singleton, so yeah, so it's global settings with the S capitalized. So just fix that, and it should get rid of the error. And so we're doing global settings.connect, and we're connecting the bloom toggled signal to ourselves, and then it's going to call the onBloom toggled function when that signal is emitted. And we actually don't need this line of code since we're not setting the brightness in this video, and we don't need that function as well. And like I was saying earlier, if I go into the environment properties here and I go to glow, we select the enabled property there for the glow by doing glow enabled. So we're just doing environment.glow enabled is equal to true, which is we're getting that by passing the settings value, which is going to be true or false, in the signal, which is going to pass that value to the bloom toggled function on our environment or world environment script. And yeah, that's a little bit hard to explain it or understand, but hopefully you kind of understood what I'm saying there. But yeah, that's how it's gonna work in this case. Now we're actually going to, let's see what other setting so the next settings are the audio settings. So for this, it's pretty straightforward to actually set up as well. So we actually just want to go to our audio. There's an audio tab at the bottom, and we want to mess with the buses. So we want to add a couple different buses by clicking the add bus button there, and we can rename them. So we're going to have a music bus and an SFX bus. We can choose the parent of said bus by clicking the drop down. So the parent of our music is going to be the master. The parent of our SFX is going to also be the master. You can set it to something else. For example, the SFX there, you can set the music to be the parent, but in this case we want it to actually be the master. And if I open up my music scene and I go and select it and go into the inspector, you will see that my volume by default is set to 0, and then it's set to autoplay when it's loaded. And the most important option here to actually get this to work is the bus option there. We want to set it to music. So now if I enable playing, it will actually play the music, but if I actually adjust the volume on the music bus, it will actually affect the volume of our music. So that's how we know that it's actually working. Now let's actually reset that value for the music bus here, and yeah, I think that's close enough to 0. And then another thing, if you change the volume for the master bus, you will notice that it also has an effect on the music bus, because the music bus is a child of the master bus essentially. So that's essentially how the bus system works in Godot. Now let's actually click this button here and then do reset volume instead of manually adjusting the slider there to try and reset it to 0. And then let's go back to our global settings script and make sure that we turn off playing so that music's not constantly playing. And actually, let me check things here. So yeah, we want to set a function up in our global settings here. So go back to your global settings and then do func update master val is what we're going to call it. And in this case, I'm actually going to name the value we're passing val just so that I know it's actually the volume. And then I'm going to do audio server. And the audio server, it has different methods here. The one we're interested in is the set bus volume dB, which takes in a bus index and a volume value. So let's use that method. So audio server set underscore bus underscore volume dB. We want to get the bus index. So by default, the master bus is index 0. The following bus after that is 1, and then the next one is 2. So it kind of works like an array sort of. So it starts at 0 and then increases by 1. So since we're adjusting the master bus, we are specifying 0, and then we're passing the val value we're getting from our settings menu. And that pretty much does it for that. You can actually go ahead and set it up for the music slider if you want, and the SFX slider as well. Or you could even refactor this same function here to also take in the index that you want to adjust and the volume, and just use this one function here. You can go ahead and do that on your own. I'm just going to do this for the master bus in this video. Anyway, the next function we want is the update FOV function, which we're also going to have to use a custom signal for. So at the top, I'm going to define a signal called FOV updated, and then we're passing a value with the signal. So in the actual function, we're going to do emit signal, and we're emitting the FOV updated signal and passing the value with it as well. So it's similar to our toggle bloom, and the reason we're doing this is because the FOV is a property of the camera. So we don't actually want this to affect the start menu or start screen camera. We just want it to affect the camera for our player in my case. So I'm going to actually go to the player scene and then into the player script. And as you notice at the top, we're selecting the camera already. And then for the function ready in our player script, we're just going to do global settings dot connect and then we're gonna connect that signal, so FOV updated, connecting it to ourselves, and then it's gonna call the onFOV updated function. Make sure it's actually a string, so it's gonna call this function when the signal is emitted. So let's define that function at the very end. So func onFOV updated, make sure that we're passing the value with it, and then inside the function we're just going to do camera, which we're selecting with the onReady var up here that you see, and then dot FOV, because that's the property that we want to change, is equal to the value we're passing with the signal. And that should actually take care of that setting. Now let's actually do the next setting, which is the mouse sensitivity. So func update mouse sense is what we're going to call it, pass the value with it, and then we're also going to have to emit a signal with this. So let's define that signal at the top. So signal mouse sense updated, and then make sure that we're passing the value with it as well. And then in the actual function we're emitting that signal, so emit signal mouse sense updated, and passing the value with the signal as well. And you could do it in a way where the sensitivity is, you know, changed for everything. I'm just gonna have it affect the player. So to do that, you know, to actually make use of this code, we're gonna go back to the player script and then scroll up to the ready function again, and then we're going to basically do the exact same thing we did earlier. So global settings dot connect, and then connecting that signal, so mouse sense updated, to ourselves, and in this case we're gonna call the onMouse sense updated function, which we're defining at the very bottom as well. So func onMouse sense updated, make sure we're passing the value yet again, and then all we're gonna do here is manipulate the mouse sensitivity that we're defining at the very top over here, as you can see. So we're gonna directly manipulate that value. So mouse underscore sensitivity is equal to the value we're passing. So that actually should set it all correctly for all the settings that we're actually gonna you know, make work in this video. So now if I go to my settings menu, we can actually make all these functions work from our settings, you know, from our global script settings, or our global settings script, if I can English. So anyway, in the on display option button, we're just gonna do global settings toggle full screen. So we're calling the toggle full screen function from our global settings, and then we're passing true if the index is equal to 1, else false. Then for the next setting, the Vsync you know, setting, so when this button is toggled, so we're gonna do global settings toggle Vsync, so we're calling the toggle Vsync function from our global settings and passing the button press value into it, which is also going to be true or false. And then we're gonna do the exact same thing for the bloom button toggled function, so global settings toggle bloom, passing the button pressed value. Then the master val slider value change function is gonna be global settings update master val, passing the value to it as well. Same thing for the music and SFX. Like I said though, I'm not going to go ahead and do that in this video. I'm just gonna do the master volume. And also another thing I quickly forgot to mention earlier is I actually defined the min and max values for all the sliders, so you want to make sure that you actually go ahead and do that. Anyway, we do the exact same thing for the FOV and the mouse sensitivity. So global settings update mouse sense, passing the value, global settings update the FOV, and passing the value. And another thing I almost forgot to mention is we're actually having a label for the FOV slider and the mouse sensitivity slider, so we can tell what we're actually setting it to. So we actually want to also adjust the text of that. So FOV val.text is equal to str and then value. And then we also want to do this for the mouse sense slider value label as well. So mouse sense val.text is equal to str value. The reason we're doing str value is because by default value is a int or float value, and str converts it over to a string. That way we don't get any errors. Anyway, we're going to use the Popup Centered function to actually show the settings menu from our start screen. when the settings button is pressed, and this is the same thing for our pause menu. So if I actually test this out and click the settings button, as you can see, it actually shows, and we can actually start messing with some of the settings here. So if I go to full screen, now it's full screen, now it's windowed. I can turn on Vsync. You can't really tell since I'm not actually displaying the FPS, but take my word for it, that's actually working. Bloom, turn it on, off, you can see a slight difference. And then with the master volume here, you can see that it is in fact actually changing the volume for our game. So everything actually seems to be working, which is good. And then if we go to the gameplay settings here, we can adjust this as well. Now there is a slight issue when I actually start the game. You will notice that the settings weren't actually saved in the settings menu, yet some of them are actually still being applied to the game. But as you see, you know, it's not showing that the Vsync is on or that the bloom is on in the actual settings menu. Same for the volume and stuff like that. So, but as you can see, it is actually affecting the game already, such as the FOV and that. So they are working, it's just not getting saved. And this is where our save script finally comes into play. So all this is actually going to be used now. So all the data in our game data, all those setting defaults are going to be used now. So let's actually make use of them now. So let's actually go to our ready function in our settings menu script and actually write the code we need. So we're gonna start by doing display options button dot select one if save dot, and then game data is what we want to access from the save script, and then we want to access the dot full screen on from the dictionary. So we want to access the value from that key. And I'm using dot notation here, but you could also use square brackets and then the string with the name. It's just, you know, personal preference and stuff like that. So I'm just going to use dot notation instead. So I can just leave it like that. So in the else, it's going to be 0. So the 1 is going to be selecting the full screen because select works with an index, and then else is 0. So if I actually select the display options button and show the actual menu, as you notice, selected is by default set to 0, which is the windowed option. If it's set to 1, it's full screen. So that's essentially what we're doing here. It's set to 1 if full screen is on, else 0. So that's gonna save what that setting there shows for our settings menu. And then to actually, you know, make sure that the setting is applied, and the next time we launch the game, we are actually going to go ahead and have to write this code manually here, because for some reason the .select doesn't actually trigger the signal that we're using to actually toggle the full screen. So we're gonna manually do global settings.toggle full screen, and then we're gonna do save.game-data.full screen and then underscore on, and then that should actually work how we actually need it. So with that should actually work for our full screen settings. Now the next settings we actually want to set is going to be the Vsync button. So vsync.pressed is equal to the save.game-data and then the .vsync on. So I'm pretty sure that's what I called it. So yeah, then we're getting that key, we're getting the value for that key by doing this. And that's all we need for that. Now the bloom button is going to be the exact same. So bloom button.pressed is equal to save.game-data.bloom on. In this case, that's what we called it. And then let's get our audio settings going. So master slider.value is equal to save.game-data.master_val is what I called it. And then lastly, we're gonna do the FOV slider.value is equal to the save.game-data. And then I called it FOV, I'm pretty sure. Yep, I did. So that's good. You gotta make sure that it actually has the exact name, otherwise you will run into some errors. And then the last actual setting is the mouse slider.value, and it's going to be equal to the save.game-data.mouse_sense. And yeah, that's gonna basically trigger all these signals on ready and make use of all these functions that we have here with these signals here. And the reason we wrote the FOV val.text is because when, you know, that signal is going to be emitted when it's unready. So it's also going to change the text unready as well. Anyway, to the last thing we need to make this settings menu fully work is we want to go to the global settings, and then we want to actually start saving those settings. So for the toggle full screen, it's going to be save.gamedata.fullscreen on is equal to value, and then we want to actually save it. So save.save data to actually store that new value and make sure that we're actually saving it to the save file. And then we want to just go ahead and actually do this for the rest of the functions as well. So the toggle vsync is going to be save.gamedata.vsync on is equal to value, and we're saving yet again save.save data. And then just continue doing this for the rest of the functions, making sure that you're using the proper name for the given setting and that you define in the save script. So yeah, and then you're actually making sure that you're actually saving or calling the save.save data function so that it actually stores the new value. So let me make sure that I'm getting the right names. Okay, it should be good. And like I said, I'm using that notation. You could use square brackets and then the string of with the name instead. It's up to you. But yeah, just make sure that you're, you know, setting the save.save data for the given setting with the new value, and then actually storing that new value by doing save.save data. And then the last one is the update mouse sense. So yet again, save.gamedata.mouse sense, because that's what we called it in our save script, is equal to the new value, and then we're saving that value by doing save.save data. Now, if we finally test everything out, everything should actually be working. So if I actually minimize the screen a little bit and then I do full screen, and now it takes up the full screen, set Vsync to on, set Bloom to on, go over to the audio, mess with the master value slider, mess around with the FOV slider, and then let's do start game. And as you can see, it actually saved those settings. So if I go into the settings menu again, as you see, it's set to full screen, Vsync is on, Bloom is on, and the master volume is set to what we had it set before. And then we can mess around with the FOV as well, the sensitivity for our mouse, and so forth. And let me actually resume the game, and now you see those settings did take effect. And then if I actually quit the game and actually relaunch the game, it should also have those settings saved when we launch the game again. And as you saw, it did set it to full screen automatically, and all the settings we had on and everything is working. So with that, you finally have a settings menu complete. So hopefully you found this video helpful. I know it was a long one, but like I said, hopefully you did learn a thing or two from it, and it was beneficial and helpful to you guys. Anyway, with all that said, the link to the starter project and the actual final project will be down in the description, where you can download it if you want. And like always, if you like the video, make sure you leave a like and consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one.